I'm going to refill my palette and then head outside to work on a landscape painting. It makes sense to do this at home so you have more time out in the field. You'll notice I have my colors in a metal tin. It has a lid and it's fairly airtight. These paints will stay wet in here for maybe a week or two. I can get more time out of it if I keep replenishing the paints as I use them up. I prefer using open acrylics for painting outside because they're the slowest drying acrylic that I can find. It seems like these dry slower than if you were to add retarder to regular acrylics. I figured I'd show you some of the other tools that I use in order to help improve the chances of success with painting outside. So you'll need a spray bottle. This is a small one made by Holbein. You can buy any spray bottle at like a supermarket or drugstore. And you want one with a fine mist like this. If it has any large droplets, they spit out onto your painting and that can leave marks, and you don't want that. So keep shopping around until you find one that has like a fine mist. This one is pretty cool because it has like a long continuous stream, but sometimes that could be too much and it's a little bit bulky for traveling outside. So that's why I like this one, and I have this as like a little backup. It's a mini mister. They come in packs of I think 2 or 3. They're great for watercolor, and I also put them in my tin like this and let it rest there while I'm painting. That way I could just pick it up and spritz my paints. Although I did end up closing it inside here one time because I forgot it was on the lid. So this is the Pochade box that I use. It's made by New Wave and it's really nice and compact. It has these rare earth magnets in there that keep it closed. But what I really like about that is it works with my metal tin. So that way I could just put the tin down on here and it holds in place. The advantage of that is I don't squeeze my paints out onto the palette. I keep them in the tin because it's easier to clean up this way. I don't clean up the blobs, I just clean up the area where I mix paints. Oil painters use thicker paint, and a lot of times they'll just leave the paint on the palette, close up the palette, and then they go to their next location and just continue using their paints. But with acrylics, I think they would turn into a mess in here because they're not as stiff, and they dry really fast too, especially when they're out on a palette exposed like that. With a tin, you close the lid, and that keeps the moisture in there. So this is the palette paper that I like to use. You can use plain white palette paper, but I like the gray, and I cut it down so that it fits the palette. This is a little bit crumpled from being in my backpack, but it works. You can also use freezer paper. It's pretty much the same thing. It's got a coating on there, and you could just cut it down to size. It's a little bit cheaper, but you do have to cut it down, and it does sort of retain this curl to it. Goldman also has open thinner that works with their open acrylics. So when your paint gets a little bit too dry and tacky, you can dip your brush in some of this and loosen up the paint. I have a smaller bottle that I can take with me for when I'm painting outside. If you don't want to use open acrylics, you can add retarder to your regular acrylics. Pretty much every manufacturer makes some form of retarder, and I think you could probably mix them between brands too. Here's the one from Golden. I believe you can use the open thinner like a retarder too. You could just buy a bottle of this and add it to your regular acrylics, and it should work like a retarder. Another option for acrylic paints that work outdoors, I have a whole collection of these interactive acrylics. And what's neat about these is that you can reactivate them once they start to dry. So if you're blending a color and it starts to tack up, you can just mist it with water and that reactivates the paint. It doesn't form a skin on top. It's almost as if they dry from the canvas on upwards. They work pretty well. If you want to see a demo of these, leave a comment below. I'm thinking about making a video. The difference between these and the open is that you would have to mist these more than you do the open, just to keep them workable. People often ask me how I clean my brushes outdoors, and I just carry one of these Nalgene bottles around with me. They make them in different sizes. This one I think is the 2 ounce. I also have a 4 ounce one, which is a little bit bigger. And what you do is just swish your brush around in there and dry it off. I'll demonstrate that later. And when it's filled up, I just dump it into this jug of wastewater that I've been collecting, and I recycle it later. I don't recommend dumping it in a sink or in the ground. It's easy enough just to take it home and collect it. I have an entire video on how to recycle acrylic wastewater. There's a link to it in the description below. Alright, so I'm going to head outside and get started. So here's the drawing, and I'll start painting. Here's the tin of paint, and like I said, it sticks right to the magnets. And all my paints are ready to go. Here's the larger mister, and I'll just give these a quick squirt. And that should be good for a while. I also have this smaller one here. It's kind of like a backup. It fits right in the tray. Plus I have water in my bag that I could use to refill these. It's been about an hour and some of these paints are still wet. You can see these colors are still good. This section over here is sticky. This is the open thinner, and I'll just put a little bit at the top here. And I could just work some of that in there. See how that loosens it up? So now I can reuse this paint, and you could do the same thing on the painting too if you want to like soften an edge. You can just put some thinner on your brush and work it in there. The thing about open acrylics is I can leave these brushes sit here and the colors are still wet. So if I want to go back in and use this brown color, I can still use it. It's still wet. And I can pick up more color and just keep painting this tree. So it's been over an hour and I haven't washed any of these brushes out. I might just wipe them off on a paper towel and then pick up more paint. I'm just using a mixture of burnt umber and ultramarine blue for the color of the tree trunks. It's a very versatile formula for mixing dark browns, and you can even use it to mix black. It comes in handy because then you don't have to add black to your palette, you can just mix it, and that's one less tube that you have to take with you. So one thing you have to think about when you're painting outside and setting up is where is the sun and where will it be in the future? So you want to set up your easel so that an hour from now, you'll still be in the shade. If you don't think about that, you could set it up and like half an hour from now, you could be roasting in the sun and your paints will be drying out. You just need a basic idea of where the sun is moving, and you can sort of figure out in your head where the shadow will be in the future, and just set up your easel so that you'll always be in the shade. The other thing too is wind is a problem. If it's really hot and windy, your paints will dry out faster. I live in an area where it's humid in the summer. The humidity can be between 50 and like 86%. So my paints will stay wet longer. If you live in a very hot and dry environment, you might have trouble even with open acrylics. In a case like that, that's really extreme, you might want to try something like water mixable oils. They work like regular oils, but they clean up with soap and water, and there's no solvents in them. It's been about 2.5 hours, and these colors in the tin, they're still wet. The paint on the brush is starting to tack up a little bit, but even the paint on the palette, it's a little bit gummy, but it's still wet. I'll give this a mist before I close it up, but just to show you that water just loosens it up. So right now it's 88 degrees and 50% humidity. When I'm painting outdoors, I clean my brushes by wiping off the excess paint first with a paper towel. Then I swish it around in a bottle of water. I like to attach a microfiber cloth to my tripod so I can dry them off quickly. Normally with both hands, but here I'm holding onto the camera. Once I'm back home, I give them a proper cleaning with brush soap. I've got 2 videos about brush soap linked in the description if you want to check those out. I made a few adjustments after bringing the painting home. The main issue was that it needed more contrast. So I added some sky holes to the trees, darkened the branches, and deepened some of the greens. If you'd like to learn more about how these paints work, you can watch my full Golden Open review and demo next. I've also included links to other related videos in the description. Thanks for watching.